Welcome to Mission Majjhima, Ajahn.
Ajahn.
So tell us about the Ākaṅkheyya Sutta, Majjhima number 6.
So the Ākaṅkheyya Sutta, which roughly translates as if a bhikkhu should wish, is the Buddha basically describing these 17 aspirations which a renunciant might have, everything from the most basic of gaining enough requisites to communal harmony, being dear and agreeable to one's companions in the holy life, to these increasingly rarefied attainments of the mind and heart, everything from putting aside fear and dread to attaining the 4 jhanas, these deep states of concentration, to the 4 formless attainments, and then the 4 levels of awakening and complete liberation. And for each of these aspirations, he basically gives the same formula for how one should develop in that path. Basically saying one should develop these 5 qualities. One should fulfill the precepts, be devoted to internal serenity of mind, not neglect jhana or meditation, be possessed of wisdom or insight, and delight or dwell in empty huts. And he finishes the sutta and begins it by encouraging the monastics to remain restrained in the patimokkha. So that's kind of the bookends for the entire discourse. So it has a bit less setting or narrative arc than some of the previous suttas we've come across, and yet it's also a profoundly practical and really useful kind of teaching. So what highlights would you draw out from the teaching, Ajahn?
Yeah, just personally, I love those 5 wish-fulfilling qualities or 5 wish-fulfilling practices. Those 5 fall under the rubric of what are called the 3 higher trainings. So the training in higher virtue, which is what being possessed of virtue falls under. The training in higher mind, which is what devotion to internal serenity of mind and not neglecting meditation fall under. And the training in higher wisdom, which being possessed of insight or vipassana. And that final quality, dwelling in empty huts, kind of straddles both the training in mind, and higher wisdom. And one, I just appreciate the Buddha singling that last one out of dwelling in huts, and that could be a cause for people being dear and agreeable to one's friends in the holy life. That's kind of fascinating, just getting out of their hair. And even though we don't have any hair, so it shouldn't be hard, but it can be. So appreciate that. One other thing is just the word fear, the concept of fear. It comes up in 2 different opposite ways in this sutta. So it occurs in those bookends that you mentioned, where the Buddha encourages monastics to be perfect in precepts, in sila, and to see fear, bhaya, or danger, same word, fear or danger, in the slightest of faults. So this is a training in learning to accurately see, danger where there is danger. So it's a wholesome fear that the Buddha is actually encouraging. Whereas when we practice these things, it's said that one of the results will be that we overcome fear and dread. So that's overcoming the unwholesome fear and dread that aren't part of the path. So quite interesting.
That's great.
And what about you, Ajahn? What do you find interesting about this sutta?
One of the qualities, or one of the aspirations, the wishes that he points to is, if one should wish, when my relatives pass, may they remember me with faith and it be of great benefit. And I think this is really the Buddha pointing to the practice of dedicating merit to the dead and doing good, and then remembering those who have passed and saying this can affect them. And I find this so heartening to know that, for me, this is the Buddha saying that even if during our life someone we love might be cut off or not open to our practice, maybe their personality or conditioning or views keep them from appreciating what we're trying to do, that after death there's a clarity that can really allow them to understand the beauty of what you've been cultivating, and it can really benefit them. So it's so beautiful to see that singled out, because many people have parents or children or friends or loved ones who who don't value exactly what they do with their practice, but it doesn't mean it won't eventually be of service to them. So, yeah. So, and what about any new elements that we're coming across for the first time in this sutta? What are the kind of novel pieces?
Yeah, two novel new elements as we progress through the Majjhima. One is it's the first mention of the 6 abhinya, the Chala Vinya, which are different psychic powers, which are basically manipulation of the elements. So being able to make the sky like earth so you can step on it, or make water like earth so you can walk across it, or to make the earth like water so you can dive in and out of it. Then you've got clairaudience, or the divine ear, where you can hear divine and human sounds. You've got telepathy, being able to read the minds of other people, knowing their different mental states. Then you've got knowledge of past lives, clairvoyance, where you can see how beings pass away and are reborn according to their karma. And then the destruction of the asavas, attainment of arhatship. It's also the first instance, I believe, so far in the progression of mentioning the 4 different types of enlightened beings. So Sotapanna, that is the stream enterer, the Sakadagami, the once returner, the Anagami, the non-returner, and the Arhat. We did find the Arhat mentioned in Mulapariyaya, along with the Seka, which are people in training, which is those first 3, but they weren't explicitly named. So those are new elements. One old element, though, is worth mentioning, is that here, and in other suttas actually that we've encountered, the Buddha says bhikkhave, which translates as "O monks" or "O bhikkhus," whereas Bhante Nalios made a good case that there are discourses where the Buddha uses that term as a catch-all for whatever practitioners are listening. He kind of addresses this in this vocative, addressing form. He says bhikkhave, bhikkhus, that is monastics, but he means just everyone. So I think this, along with many of the other suttas, are applicable to, if you're living among practitioners, then if you want to be dear and agreeable to them, then fulfill the precepts and devote yourself to internal serenity of mind. Don't neglect meditation. Be possessed of insight and dwell in empty huts. So
that's great.
And Ajahn, what about the setting?
So, actually, I think the setting is really worth just looking at briefly. And this discourse takes place in Savatthi, as have the previous discourses we've read so far. One takes place near Savatthi, if not in it. And Savatthi, it's a very important setting. 75 of the suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya take place in or near Savatthi, about half of them. The Buddha spent 25 rains retreats in this city, and it was the capital of Kosala, one of 2 large kingdoms in northern India. It's the home of King Pasenadi, a really fascinating character who the Buddha has a lot of dialogue with. He's initially quite ambivalent about the Buddha, but eventually gains a huge amount of faith. In Savatthi, you have the Lady Visakha, Anathapindika, the 2 foremost givers among, or donors among the laity, and the vassal state of Kosala was Sakya, where the Buddha was from. So it's just useful to get a picture of this state, and just to the south there was Magadha, the other great kingdom, the capital of which was Rajagaha, ruled over by King Bimbisara. So that's definitely a worthwhile setting to keep in mind as well.
So Ajahn, what is our word of the week?
Our word of the week is patimokkha, and that comes from the root mok, which is free, and it is the sort of code of training that the monastics abide by, and its root is freedom, and hopefully that's its end as well. So,
All right.